Hello, everyone. It's Heather, and I am here with another edition of Ghost Education 101. And today's episode, I've actually been looking forward to since I booked it a while back. But I'm joined by Mark Anthony, and I'm going to do his introduction in just a minute. But while you guys are here, make sure you ask any questions you have. Feel free to comment. I have a list of questions, but we will also go over any questions the audience might have. And to get started, like I said, I'm joined with Mark Anthony. He's a psychic explorer, also known as the psychic lawyer, which we will get to in a little bit. He is a fourth generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He is an Oxford educated attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. This psychic explorer travels to mystical locations in remote corners of the world and to examine ancient mysteries and supernatural phenomena. He also appears nationwide on TV and radio, including CBS TV's The Doctors and Gaia TV's Beyond Belief with George Nori. Sorry, I should put my glasses on. He is a co-host of The Psychic and the Doc and of the Transformation Network. He is featured speaker at conferences, expos, and universities, which include Brown, Columbia, Harvard, and Yale. Mark Anthony is the columnist for the Best Holistic Life magazine. He is the author of the Afterlife Frequency, which you guys absolutely have to get. I'm loving it so far. And he is also a best-selling author of books called Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. So everybody help please welcome Mark Anthony to our show today.
Thank you for having me on, Heather.
Thank you. And like I had said, I'm going to start with just some questions I had written down, but feel free to ask any questions that you have as we go. So in the Afterlife Frequency, you write about how it was growing up as a psychic. When did you first realize that you had this ability?
I was 3.5. And what started going on is I began talking to my invisible friends. Now, it's not unusual for a toddler to do that. But my mother and father could see them as well because both my parents were mediums. And this is literally in my DNA. It runs for generations on both my mother's and father's sides of the family. And I researched it and I tracked it back into the 1890s. So I'm assuming that it goes farther back. So here I am at 3.5 and I'm talking to dead people. And I remember my mom was like, "Oh my gosh, he's got it." And my father was, "Oh my God, he's got it."
So speaking of that, what was it like growing up with parents who were psychic as well?
Well, it was tough when I was a teenager because I couldn't get away with anything. Teenagers, I was kind of a typical teenage boy in some ways, and you're always up to something. Not necessarily anything bad, but that's just part of being a teen. But mom and dad, and parents are tuned in to their kids. If they're good parents and paying attention, but mine were like tuned in times 10. And, I'd say, "Oh, I was with so-and-so." "Oh, no, you weren't." They always were a couple steps ahead of me. And looking back on it, what an honor. It was just really great having parents that understood and who had these abilities. And I think about some of the conversations we would have over dinner. We would talk about Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Krishna, because we had always a very open-minded, a very broad interpretation of understanding the afterlife and God. And even though, I was raised in the Catholic faith and I was supposed to go into the clergy, that's where I was headed. But I felt it had too many rules and regulations, so I ended up going to law school. And I'm laughing about that because talk about jumping out of the frying pan right into the fire when it comes to the rules and regulations. But it was great. It was great. I'm very thankful for the parents that I had.
And this was one question I even had when I was reading the book, but a psychic lawyer. I just find that very interesting and intriguing. Don't most people think that those might be polar opposites of each other or cause a conflict of interest maybe when you're practicing law?
Well, how could it cause a conflict of interest?
You might know things that you shouldn't know, I guess is where I'm trying to not really a conflict of interest, but giving you insight that you shouldn't know, or did it give you insight to help?
Well, first off, a good lawyer never asks a question that he or she doesn't already know the answer to. And having an intuitive sense, whether you're a psychic medium or not, is an important part in business, no matter what type of profession that you're in. So there's certainly no conflict of interest there. And, because people are like, well, psychic lawyer, how did that happen? Or people ask, like, well, what is a psychic lawyer? It's like, well, it's not really very hard to figure out. I was born a psychic medium and I went to law school. Okay, so I'm a psychic and a lawyer. And it's the media that labeled me the psychic lawyer. And then, when I started lecturing and I started speaking and writing my books, then the media started calling me the psychic explorer, because I've spent a lot of my life traveling around the world and studying supernatural phenomenon, ancient mysteries, because that's what I enjoy doing. And so, in the practice of law, people think that being a lawyer and being a psychic medium are so far apart. And in many ways they are, Heather. Because, being a medium is a very sensitive, a very intuitive and emotional thing. And being an attorney, you have to be extremely analytical. Excuse me. But both professions are about evidence. As an attorney, you have to have evidence to substantiate your case. But as a medium, I'm an evidential medium. That means I have to bring forth pieces of evidence and information from spirits that I can't possibly know. And that's what helps guarantee the quality of the contact. And both professions have been about helping people. Lawyers, and look, when you say that you're a lawyer that sees dead people, I mean, that always gets some kind of reaction, but but as an attorney, I have helped a lot of people through some of the most difficult periods of their lives. Losing a loved one, being arrested, being horribly injured, being sued, people trying to take advantage of you. And what do you do as a medium is you help people cope with the loss of a loved one by facilitating communication between the people here and their loved ones in spirit. And just for the record, people are always like, will you take a case? Take a case. I am no longer accepting clients. I still appear on radio and television as a legal analyst and a commentator. I've been on several programs to talk about high profile cases, and particularly when the legal system and the paranormal collide. And that happens more than people might think. So there's a lot of different facets to what I do, but I'm concentrating now on my work as a psychic medium, as a near-death experience researcher, as a paranormal investigator, and a lecturer.
Okay. And then Philip wanted to know, did your abilities help you in law school, such as did you know the answers on your tests?
First off, being a psychic medium does not make one all-knowing and all-seeing. It gives us insights. Being a psychic is part of my skill set. But I will say one thing that is really interesting, and I'm glad, Philip, that you asked this question. I remember telling my roommate, I had a roommate in law school, and we had just had the evidence exam, and then we heard, okay, evidence tests are going to be posted. And that night, I had a dream that I went into the law school and I took the elevator to the second floor to the library. That's where they posted the exam grades. And I remember seeing the elevator door open, and I walked out and I turned and I went up to this bulletin board and I looked and I could see my name, and I saw 67, which is a failing grade. And I remember waking up and I'm like, my heart's palpitating, so I'm eating some cereal and we're drinking coffee, and I'm telling my roommate, I'm like, I dreamt I had a 67 on the evidence test, and he's like, oh, that's a bummer, dude. All right. So I go to the law school, and when I walk in, they go, evidence grades have been posted in the library. So next thing I know, I'm in the elevator. I'm like, oh my God, deja vu, and the doors open, and it was right where, the board. And so I walk up to it, and I'm like, look at it, and I find, they did it by student number, not name. And I found my student number, and I got an A, and I got like a 92. And then I looked directly below my grade. The person right after me got a 67. And it was like, woo, woo. It was, and I remember going, wow, so psychic abilities can give you insights into things, but look there. Okay, I saw the 67. I didn't see my grade. Okay. So anyway, I hope that helped answer your question.
Yeah, he said he couldn't resist asking. So.
No, that's fine. And I welcome questions, because I mean, how often do you get to talk to a lawyer that sees dead people? People want to know what's it like, and it isn't all knowing and all seeing. I don't know everything. I have insights. I get impressions. I receive messages. God is all knowing and all seeing. And I was interviewed on a national TV show, and I said, I'm a medium. I'm not the Messiah. So people need to realize that when you're a psychic, it doesn't give us. We're not texting and instant messaging with the other side. We're receiving waves of frequency, and I explain this in the Afterlife Frequency on the basis of quantum physics, because all this, Heather, all the different forms of spirit communication, whether it's contact through a medium like me, or you get a direct visitation, or a near-death experience, or a deathbed vision, or an out-of-body experience, traditionally they've all been treated as separate phenomena. But I've been analyzing this for years, and I've discovered they're not separate. They all have a common denominator of energy transfer and frequency alignment, and all of this is explainable through quantum physics. But just don't expect my book to be a dry technical read. I explain the science in language that anybody can understand, and then illustrate it with stories that people can relate to.
Yeah, several of the classes for my PhD were in quantum physics and how it relates to the paranormal. And I do have to say, I found your book more interesting than the stuff I had to read for those classes.
Well, thank you. Well, as soon as we hear quantum physics, you think, oh my God, it's like, it's gonna be like reading a calculus exam. And the thing is, like you, all right, a PhD, I have a Juris Doctorate, all right, and we had to read some of the most boring books. I remember I was, it's required, at least when I went to law school, it's required to take federal basic income taxation. In other words, the Internal Revenue Code. And the book is like, this thick, and it's, oh my God, you try to read that stuff, and it is so dry. And I'm laughing because one of my favorite judges in American jurisprudence, his name was Learned Hand. I mean, when you name your kid Learned Hand, they better become a famous judge. Other than that, getting beat up every day on the way home from school for having a name like Learned Hand. But he was an amazing guy, and he wrote beautiful opinions. And when you read his legal opinions, he was an appellate judge for the state of New York. It's just fascinating. I mean, he was such a great writer, and one of the greatest legal minds this country has produced, which these days we're in very short supply. And so here I am, I'm in the law library, and I'm struggling through reading the Internal Revenue Code. And I said, I can't take this. I'm and I turn around, and there's a whole stack of books behind me, and I see this book. It's about Learned Hand. So I pull it out, and I open it. It was one of those things. It opened right to this page where he was writing about the Internal Revenue Code. And he referred to it as a fantastic labyrinth that is cross-exception to cross-exception, and the words danced before my eyes in a meaningless procession. And I remember laughing, thinking, if Learned Hand had a hard time getting through the Internal Revenue Code, it made me feel a lot better that day.
And that actually brings me to somewhat of a question of how did being a lawyer get you interested in understanding more about the nature of our consciousness and how it functions?
Well, the thing that I always enjoyed about being an attorney is, did you ever see that movie, The Devil's Advocate, with Al
Mhm.
Pacino and Keanu Reeves? And the basic premise is Al Pacino's the senior partner of this law firm, and he's Satan. Okay. And Keanu Reeves is this young attorney who's working for the law firm, and then he figures out that his boss is the devil. And he says, and Keanu Reeves is like, but why? Why the law? And Al Pacino goes, because it puts us in everything. You know, Al Pacino does that. And that was a very, very poignant statement, because think about it. What aspect of our lives is not connected to some form of legal regulation? I mean, everything is. Our food, our telecommunications, what we read, the specifications for our clothing. I mean, everything has legal connections to it, or some type of regulation. But as an attorney, I had started off as a prosecutor for the state of Florida, and then I went into criminal defense work, and then civil litigation and personal injury, head injury lawsuits. So I had to work with police, I had to work with forensics, I had to work with physicists, I had to work with ballistics, I had to work with medical doctors, neuroscientists, neurobiologists, chemists. It literally put me in everything. And it gave me such a fantastic background in so many different fields. And then in my civil practice, I specialized in head injury litigation, brain damage. So when I started segueing out of law and working in earnest with my mediumistic abilities, and realizing that there's a physiological basis for how people are able to pick up on messages psychically, and it has a lot to do with the pineal gland in the brain, it all tied together. And so to me, it was just absolutely fascinating to be able to draw upon my background, in addition to my personal interests in theology, archaeology, history, and that's how.
A few more questions are popping up. Did you ever ask your spirit guides for direction or help on a case?
Always, always, and everybody should ask God for guidance. Ask for guidance. And I got to tell a funny story. All right, Philip's got good questions. Thank you, Philip.
He's
So,
normally my co-host, but he's sitting behind the scenes today.
aha. Okay, so I had this case. It was a DUI, driving under the influence, and I was defending this guy. And this is one of the rare cases where my client was actually innocent. Okay, because people would say, well, how could you represent people if you knew they were guilty? It's like, seriously? Okay, I mean, in the practice of law, I'd say about 99% of your clients are guilty. And I know we're not supposed to say things like that, but it's the truth. And the problem with my client is he had a lot of physical problems. He had really bad asthma, so he's like, he had to use this inhaler, and he had terminally bloodshot eyes, and he had to take all these medications. And with all due respect to my client, he was not the most physically attractive person in the world. I mean, he kind of looked like a garden gnome. I mean, he had the beard, and he just did, and but he was a heck of a nice guy, and it was like, God, he's innocent. And the arresting officer, okay, so we impanel the jury, and it turned out that the jury was all women, okay, so it was 6 women and 1 alternate, so there's 7, but it would only go to 6. And the arresting officer walks into the courtroom, and dear God, if he did not look like Tom Cruise from Top Gun. I mean, the guy, it's like he looked like he stepped out of one of those magazines, and he's photoshopped, and he has the shiny badge and the crisp uniform, and he's sitting on the stand, and all the women are looking at him going, ah, and I'm like, oh my God, could this be getting any worse? And my client's like, next to me, and so he's testifying perfectly when the prosecution's asking him questions, and he's looking at the women on the jury. And yes, I saw the suspect. He was weaving within his lane, and I pulled him over, and I requested he do the field sobriety test. And all right, so he's going down the line, and he made a real big deal about my client having bloodshot eyes. And I remember saying, God, I really need help with this. Okay. And so I got up, and all of a sudden I had that tingly sensation, when the spirit's around, that electromagnetic sensation. And I said, officer, yes, counsel, said, you've made an awfully big deal about my client having bloodshot eyes. Now, there's a lot of reasons people can have bloodshot eyes, aren't there, based on your training and experience? Well, I suppose so. Well, people could have bloodshot eyes from maybe pool chlorine, maybe been swimming in a pool. There was no evidence that your client was swimming in a pool. And then I felt the spiritual connection, and I knew to ask this question. What about if someone's been crying? Couldn't they have bloodshot eyes? And he looks at me and said, I've never seen anyone have bloodshot eyes from crying. And then I said, are you married? Well, I never made her cry. I mean, he burst out with this rage and anger. And I looked at the women on the jury, and all of a sudden they're all like, looking at him like, you. And he went from being Tom Cruise to, Ted Bundy. I mean, like that. And it was because I received an impulse from a spirit to ask him that. And what it was is, yes, he may have had that facade of being handsome and all-American boy and all that, but that rage and anger about a woman, well, when we concluded the evidence and the jury went to the jury room, Heather, they came back in under 5 minutes with a not guilty. I mean, I have never had a verdict that quickly, let alone a not guilty come back that quickly, and it was because of that. So for Philip, yes, I have had. There's other cases, but that one's a bit more amusing, I think.
See, and that's what I like about your book is you add all these little stories and explain the different points, and it makes it real interesting. Derek wants to know, when writing your book, did you encounter any quantum physicists that argue against free will in favor of determinism?
Not when I was writing my book, but I've had yes, I've always had that discussion with many physicists and many people in a philosophical mindset. And my belief, and after doing 15,000 plus readings and connecting with hundreds of thousands of spirits, there's a day that we're going to be born, and there's a day that we're going to die. And so that appears to be determined. So there's your determinism. But what we do with the time in between is the gift of free will. And I mean, I could talk about that all night, so I'll just leave it there because that's a whole nother discussion. So, but thank you, Derek.
Book. When you do paranormal investigating, do you work with others or on a team?
Absolutely. What I like is the cross-disciplinary approach. You want to have, the investigators there running the equipment, the K2 meters, the infrared, spirit box, EVP, all that stuff, and then I'm there as the medium, and it's really good because this way we can correlate our data. And when I do a paranormal investigation, I like to go into a situation without any preconceived notions. Because a lot of people walk in, and Heather, you probably do this too. We have to employ the scientific method. let's say we're investigating the Amityville house. Okay, well, we know it's horror and there's demons and devils and da-da-da. All right, well, if you walk into it with that mindset, you've already polluted your study. You have a preconceived notion of what you're going to find and what you're going to do, and it's better to go into that situation, set up the equipment, collect the data. I receive the impressions, we write them down in as objective a manner as possible, and then after the investigation, we analyze it. But to go in and to say there are devils here, okay, well, how object? That's like you walk into the doctor's office and he looks and he goes, "I bet you have bubonic plague," and you show no symptoms of it. All right, he's already made up his mind. You've got bubonic plague.
Right. And that's always been one of my goals in this field is I want to come up because you want to be scientific about it, but the scientific method 100% doesn't work because you can't always, the ghosts don't perform on command. But I want to come up with some type of scientific method that we could use in the paranormal field and make it a standardized way of researching and studying.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. Yeah, spirits don't, perform. It's not like they're Pavlov's dogs. Okay, we ring a bell and they salivate. We ring a bell and the thing about paranormal investigation, it's kind of like going to court. There's a lot of sitting around and waiting before anything happens. And then when it does, it does.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and real quick, I just want to remind everybody, for those of you just joining us, I'm here with Mark Anthony, and he's the author of the Afterlife Frequency. If you haven't gotten this, you guys need to get this. And I brought that up only because Stephanie wanted to talk about her favorite part of your book so far, is the part where you quote Mevlana, and I'm like going to butcher that. I'm not very good with the foreign names. And I haven't quite gotten to that part yet. Either that or I don't remember that part. But did you want to explain a little bit about this section?
Yeah. Rumi was one of the great Persian Islamic scholars of the medieval era. I believe he lived in the 13th century. And he's just wonderful. He's quoted by people of many faiths. And he writes about, the lamps are different, but the light is the same. Now, what essentially he's saying is that think of religions as the lamps. They come in all shapes and sizes and they're all different, but the light is the same. So the light is how we perceive the spiritual energy of God. And if you look at this, every great spiritual leader, teacher, from, let's say, Krishna and the Hindu sages 5,000 years ago in India, even, in ancient Egypt, ancient Tibet, you look at Buddha, Zoroaster, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Native American spirituality, they all depict and describe God in terms of light. And it's fascinating that light is the only form of electromagnetic energy visible to the human eye. And people who have a near-death experience talk about traveling into the light. People use the word enlightenment about connecting with the light. And so that's what Rumi's talking about. We may have different religions and belief systems, but ultimately, we're all talking about and connecting with the same energy. You can call God the source, the divine power, whatever you want to call this. And for those of us who've had near-death experiences and encounter that, even the word God is too limiting. So Rumi, I think, is just one of those amazing philosophers and theologians whose teachings and observations transcend any one lamp.
And then Stephanie also wants to know, she says some psychics who are born with their gifts say often when they become adults, they stop seeing full embodied spirits. They can feel and hear them, but stop seeing them. Has that happened to you?
Absolutely not. Not at all.
And then Philip, do you believe we have free will after death?
Of course.
And I continue scrolling down through some of the comments. The one question I do have is, like I've mentioned before, the book is different and very entertaining because I like how you add your personal stories to it. How does the Afterlife Frequency vary from other books written by other mediums?
Well, in several ways. Earlier, I touched on that there's different forms of interdimensional communication. That's what I call spirit contact. We live in the material world dimension. Spirits live in a higher vibrational frequency, the afterlife frequency. And when the vibration of our brainwave frequency increases and spirits decrease their vibration, you get a frequency match. All right. Well, this can occur during mediumship, during a direct visitation that somebody may have in a dream, or they feel a spirit around them, during a near death experience, a shared death experience where more than one person experiences what the dying person is seeing, an out of body experience. And so instead of treating those as all separate phenomenon, I saw a common denominator between them, and that is energy transfer and frequency alignment. Also, I take a very strong scientific approach. A lot of mediums don't have that background, don't know about these things, and I've done the research and I've had it peer reviewed by some of the top afterlife and survival of consciousness researchers in the world. Then the other aspect is that the raft technique. How I teach people how to recognize, accept, feel, and trust messages from spirits. And a lot of mediums want to write these books. I'm going to turn you into a medium, turn you into a medium. Well, the fact of the matter is we're not all mediums, just like we're not all Olympic athletes. We're not all, physics majors. We're not all concert pianists. People are good at doing different things. That's one of the beautiful things about individuality. Instead of trying to turn people into mediums, because I've seen so many people that have gone to psychic development classes, and it's nothing more than an exercise in frustration. They're crying, they're sad, they can't do it. And instead, why not teach them how, when they receive a message or they feel the presence, how to get the most out of it instead of, it's like, I can bang around on a piano, but don't expect me to play some Rachmaninoff. I mean, that's not going to happen because that's not in my skill set. So that's why I want to help everybody understand that we can all have these experiences, but don't pressure yourself about turning into something that you're not.
Yeah, and since you took a more scientific approach in the book, can you explain what you mean by the electromagnetic soul?
The electromagnetic soul is one of the new terms that I have introduced in this book, and this is based on years of study. Every major belief system teaches that the soul, the who and what we are, it's called soul or a spirit in realms of faith. It's referred to as consciousness in psychology and in physics, and that's who we are. And all the belief systems teach that the soul comes into the body, and when the body dies, it moves on. And we know from the study of neuroscience, which is the field of science that studies the human brain, that the brain has a very complex electrical field. And that neuroscience cannot explain how the brain creates consciousness. The official position is that, well, the brain operates on chemical reactions and electrical impulses, but we're completely at a loss to say how it creates your sense of identity. That's because the brain doesn't do this. We know from quantum physics that energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. So I developed the term, the electromagnetic soul, the EMS, to describe what we really are, which is pure consciousness that is eternal electromagnetic energy. Because who and what we are is our electromagnetic soul. And as energy, it cannot be created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. And so understanding the EMS, the electromagnetic soul, is the basis for understanding all the different forms of spirit communication, whether it's a near-death experience, a shared death experience, a deathbed vision, a visitation, because it all has to do with aligning the frequency of the EMS with the higher vibration of the afterlife frequency, the other side.
Okay, and just to touch on that a little bit, is that only something humans can have, or can animals have that as well?
Oh, animals have EMSs, big time, because guess what? They're alive, and anything that's alive has an energy field.
Mhm.
Um, well, everything has an energy field. This pen, okay, this pen is vibrating because we know from the laws of physics, from quantum physics, that everything is made of molecules, which are made of atoms, which are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, which in turn are made of a smaller particle known as quantum. An electron is a quantum because it's 1/1800th the size of a proton. All right. And on that subatomic level, quantum, everything's electromagnetic energy. And this is really cool because this is where, traditionally in science, you have physics on one end, the study of inorganic matter and energy, and biology on the other end, the study of organic matter, and the never the twain shall meet, except on the subatomic level where everything is electromagnetic energy. So then the distinction between biology and physics ceases to exist. And we know that everything on the subatomic level vibrates. So this pen is electromagnetic energy, but so am I. And so are you. And so is the light that we're seeing, and the radio waves that this show is being broadcast on, and the grains of sand on the beach, and the ocean, and the nuclear reactions in the sun. Everything on the subatomic level is electromagnetic energy. But everything vibrates at different frequencies. So, a cat or a dog or a monkey or a crocodile, everything has an electromagnetic field. And so when that being dies, that energy gets transferred to another frequency. Now, when it comes to spirit communication, it appears that any being capable of the emotion of love is capable of spirit communication. And I've connected with dogs, cats, horses, rabbits, gerbils, hamsters, birds. I even connected once with a bear. That was interesting. But I've yet to connect with reptiles or insects, and I'm kind of okay not doing that.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine seeing a ghost spider or something walking through my house.
Yeah, I mean, really, they're creepy enough on their own. Not the spirits are creepy, all right. I mean, but
Okay. Rudy's joining us, and he wants to know: do you regard the Bible as infallible or inerrant?
I'm going to pass on that one.
Okay. Okay. When you wrote about the soul phone, and I know you have an NDA, does this imply that we have something about the numerical frequency of the afterlife, not just higher?
Let me read that. Does this imply that we know something about the numerical frequency of the afterlife? Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. And when I wrote about the soul phone, I was in Dr. Gary Schwartz, his laboratory at the University of Arizona, and he showed me the soul phone. And I would love to tell you what I saw, but I am not at liberty to discuss that. It will be announced, it will be released, but it has to be through him and through his office. But it's really cool. And it's going to be a huge game changer, I think, planet-wide.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Phil wants to know, as experienced of a medium as you are, do you do any sitting in the power or other rituals before working?
Absolutely. I always I meditate. I ask God to send forth spirits for the highest of purposes, to bring forth messages of love, healing, and resolution to help these people. and I meditate. So, and I always start all my sessions with the prayer of Saint Francis. I just really love that prayer. It just resonates with me. Also, that's my way of announcing to spirits, okay, I'm doing this now. And because you have to set the parameters of the contact. You're either doing this or you're not. Because I run into a lot of mediums that are like, oh, they're around me all the time and I see them and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay. Do you leave the doors and windows of your house open and unlocked 24/7? Why would you do that to your brain? Also, if you're constantly getting bombarded, we are living in the material world. We are here for a reason. We have things we have to do. I mean, it may be as mundane as, I got to go grocery shopping and get some gas in the car and, go pick up a part for the irrigation system or whatever, but we do have a life here, and it degrades the quality of the contact if we're open all the time. So it's always better to let them know I'm doing this or I'm not doing this, and that helps build a rapport between you and the spirits that you work with regularly and that are coming through, and they'll respect your privacy.
Okay. And then Rudy asked, does our soul or magnetic soul exist prior to our physical existence?
Yes, and I believe I already explained that.
Okay, and I guess I'll go back to my list of questions that I have for you. The other thing you mentioned in the book is the collective consciousness. What exactly is that?
The collective consciousness, earlier I mentioned, I touched on this, but now I can explain it in greater detail. All right, our electromagnetic soul. Think of that as like a drop of water. And when we physically die, that drop of water leaves our brain and then plunges into this eternal sea of souls. That's the collective consciousness. So the EMS is connected to other spirits, connected to other spirits, connected to other spirits, connected to other spirits. Think of it this way. You become part of a giant cosmic internet. All right. And I'm being a little bit funny there, but it's true. And that's why when spirits will adjust their frequency to communicate with me or communicate with you or whoever, many times they will present information that far exceeded the scope of anything that they knew while living in this world. Why? Is because they are patched into this collective consciousness. And I've seen this on so many occasions where I'll be doing a reading for somebody and this amazing amount of medical information comes through. And people say, well, Aunt Betty didn't know anything about that. Well, maybe she didn't when she lived here in this world, but she certainly does now as part of the collective. Edgar Cayce, the great psychic medium, died back in the 1940s, referred to this phenomenon as the universal mind. Spiritual Christianity may refer to this as the Christ consciousness. Hindus refer to this as Krishna consciousness. So I call it the collective consciousness because I think that's a more accurate and less, sectarian way of understanding it.
Okay. And you have a lot of the top researchers in the world for the survival consciousness and near-death experiences actually endorsing the afterlife frequency. Can you explain a little bit more about what a near-death experience is?
A near-death experience, excuse me, is when somebody physically dies and their EMS, their electromagnetic soul, leaves the body and comes very close to not returning to the body. And near-death experiences have been documented for thousands of years, and they baffled medical professionals and religious, leaders, because these people would die and then they would resurrect. So there's all these resurrections, and people would start talking about, oh my gosh, I went through this tunnel and into this great white light, and there were my relatives who had died, and it defied explanation. Nobody even knew what to call it until the 1970s when Dr. Raymond Moody developed the term near-death experience. Think of it like, okay, here you are and you're dying, and it's like you're attached to a rubber band. You're like, and you go right up to death, and whoop, then you come back. Because if the rubber band snaps, you're not coming back. Then you talk to me. Okay, but with an NDE, they have been documented now for the past 50 years globally, and we've discovered similarities between them. And it doesn't matter your age, race, creed, socioeconomic status, whether or not you have a creed, whether or not you believe in God. Drugs and anesthesia not a factor. I mean, hypo was anoxia or hypoxia, low oxygen or no oxygen levels in the brain. None of that seems to matter. And that a near-death experience is evidence that our consciousness, our EMS, survives physical death and stays intact and coherent.
Okay. And have you ever experienced one of those?
I did, and I write about it in the Afterlife Frequency. I don't want to go into it here,
Right.
Because I want the reader to. I mean, I spent a lot of time writing that, and I want you to enjoy the benefit or of what happened. But yes, and my mother had a near-death experience, at least one that I'm aware of. My father had two of them. So, my father, he was 16 years old, and he was in a terrible car accident. And he said the next thing he knew, he was floating above it, and he could see all these people running and like working on his body. And he said, "I'm dead, and this feels great." He said, "I feel like I'm just floating." And he said, then this light, he said he was going to this light, and this voice spoke to him. And my dad's name was Earl, and the voice said, "Earl, it is not your time. You must go back." And Dad said, the next thing I know, I'm laying there on the ground, and it hurt like hell. He said he was in terrible pain. And then he joined the Navy. He became a Navy SEAL. And after the Navy, he was diving off the coast of New Jersey. He was in a dive club. And my dad, he was a Navy SEAL, but he was not just a scuba diver. He was a really good one. In fact, I understood that he actually dove with the legendary Jacques Cousteau on one occasion. And, this was years before I was born. And he said he was in 150 feet of water, and his regulator jammed. And he said he started aspirating. I mean, he was sucking water, and he goes, that was it. I was drowning. And he said the next thing he knew, there was that floating sensation. He saw the light, and the same voice said, "Earl, it's not your time." And my dad said, he goes, "Mark, in those days, when your regulator jammed, you were dead." He goes, "I don't understand what happened, but it started working again." He said, "I was 150 feet deep." He goes, "I should have died. There is no explanation for me surviving." And then my mother, I remember I was a teenager, and she was very, very ill, and she had peritonitis, and actually part of her intestines burst. And the surgeon came out and said, "We think she's going to die. We don't think we can save her." And I'll never forget my dad. I probably shouldn't say this, but my dad said, "If she dies, you die." Well, the surgeon went back into the operating room, and they said my mother died on the table, and they worked on her for almost 10 minutes and brought her back. And I don't know if my dad would have carried out his threat, but he wasn't one to say something like that lightly. And my mother said that she went into this beautiful white light, and she saw her father. She was very, very close to her father. And she saw her grandmother, Giovanna, And Giovanna was a very well-known psychic in the Italian community of North New Jersey and Little Italy. And she saw her Aunt Etta as well. And they all told her, Jeannie, you have to go back. And she said, I didn't want to come back. She said it was so nice. She goes, I couldn't believe seeing them again.
Okay, and I think we did, yep. Will the soul phone release cause a huge rift in the Christianity world? And he says rift equals meltdown in another comment later on.
Well, it could, or it could confirm to people that everything Jesus said about eternal life is true.
And then the one question I want to ask is, in your book, and even you mentioned it earlier in this broadcast, that you traveled a lot. You've traveled the world. What is one of your favorite places that you've traveled to, and why?
Oh my gosh.
It's like picking your favorite child.
Yeah. God, there's so many. Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu in Peru has got to be up there as one of my favorites. Some of the pieces on the wall behind me I got near Machu Picchu because it was just so amazing, the history of it. You know, the lost city of the Incas, the city the Spanish conquistadors never found. It's still shrouded in mystery. I think definitely that. Stonehenge in England, Loch Ness in Scotland, I absolutely love. I remember being in Venice and just loving it because I came upon Venice. It was at night, and so we're taking this ferry and we're going by the city, and I'm looking at it, and you see people living there, and you're looking through the window. You know, not that we're peeking, but you can see them. This is an old woman hanging clothes to dry, young couple like hugging and kissing, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, where else in the world can you see a city the way it looked 500 years ago? You know, it was just amazing. And visiting the cell that Marco Polo was imprisoned in, you know, that was just really, really cool. So, I mean, I could go on, but those are just a couple glimpses, if you will.
Okay. And then in your book, The Afterlife Frequency, you explain the different forms of contact with spirits, such as through a medium like you, or in a dream state, or deathbed visions, near death, and shared death experiences, or the proverbial I just saw a ghost. Is there a common denominator between all of these different forms of contact?
Oh, sure. And that's the electromagnetic soul, the EMS, and the alignment of our EMS with the higher vibrational frequency of spirits. So, yeah, that would be the common denominator.
And then Stephanie wants to know if you have your own podcast or show because you have a gift of storytelling.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Every Thursday night on the Transformation Network. And I invite everyone to go to my website, afterlifefrequency.com. Please sign up for my newsletter. You can find out about scheduling a one-on-one phone reading with me. And you can also get my book. It'll take you to the hyperlink on Amazon. But every Thursday night, my co-host is Dr. Pat Basili. And she is the host of the Dr. Pat Show and the founder of Transformation Network. And so the name of the show is The Psychic and the Doc. And people call in, and I'll do a reading. And then she's a behavioral psychologist. She'll add her insights to this. And we have a lot of interesting guests. In fact, tomorrow night, we have Colonel Diane Corcoran, and U.S. Army retired. She's also a near-death experiencer. And so that's our Veterans Day show, but we're having not only a veteran, but an NDE as well. So and you can go to my website and find out how to tune in. And we also broadcast it on Facebook Live as well.
And I'll make sure I get all the links on Ghost Education 101 as well, so you guys can have that as a reference later on. And then Philip wants to know, what's your most memorable paranormal investigation?
I'm laughing because I was at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park. And I think every paranormal investigator knows about the Stanley Hotel, and everyone should visit it. It's absolutely beautiful. And I was part of a paranormal conference, and then of course at 10 p.m. they start the investigations. We had several different teams deployed throughout the Stanley and its grounds, and we're in the cavern beneath the Stanley. And so the investigator there, all of his equipment starts going off the scale, and we're all looking at it. There's about a dozen people there, and my manager Rocky, she travels with me everywhere. Rocky's great. So she's standing there, and she said everybody's in this cave and they're all looking one way, and she said, all those horror movies I watched my whole life, while everyone's over there looking one way, the monster's creeping up behind them. So she turns around, and she goes, oh dear God. And we all turn around, and it was like, whoa. At the end of the cavern, there was this undulating light. It was this greenish silver light, and it was like a band, and it was kind of, it was like an eel. I mean, it didn't look like an eel, but you know how an eel, like, when they swim, they have these undulating patterns, and it was this silvery green light. Well, the investigators' equipment is going off the charts. The infrared's picking up on it. The EM, the electromagnetic detectors were. The EVP was making all kinds of sounds. The K2 meter was going crazy. And he said, this is obviously some type of spiritual spiritual phenomenon. And at first, I'm looking at it going, well, could this be projected? Well, a guy that was with us worked at Disney, and he said, and he was in special effects at Disney. He goes, he goes, we can't do this. So I thought, well, let me walk into it, because here I am, the medium, and I'm walking into it. Then all of a sudden I'm thinking, should I really be doing this? Walking into this, and I heard my mother's voice, and she said, I'm here, Mark, and I was like, okay. So I walk into this, and this greenish silver light envelops me, and I realized this is female. And then I said, oh, it's an elemental. And an elemental, they're non-human spiritual intelligence, which are aligned with plants, animals, earth. And I've encountered them in several different places in the world. In England, they call them fairies. In Japan, they call them the kami. In Hawaii, the metahune. I've encountered this energy or one that felt like it. And I said, and she wasn't malevolent or scary, because the ghost hunter was like, "Oh, could it be evil?" I go, "Stop that! She's female," and she was curious. And I remember the message I got is, "Why are these people? Why are these beings so curious about me?" And then it started to shift. It kind of looked like a lava lamp. And then it went over to the investigator and enveloped him. And he goes, "It's enveloping me." I go, "Calm down. You're studying her. She's studying you." He goes, "She is?" I go, "Well, yeah. It would come down here where she lives. We're poking and prodding and sending EM pulses all over the place. She wants to know what's going on." He goes, "Oh." And it wasn't negative or scary at all. Because the first inclination of the people are like, "It's a demon." It's like, can we stop leaping into the arms of Satan every 5 seconds? That's not the scientific method. And I don't believe in devils or demons or hell. It's all mythological nonsense. But because people tend to, when they encounter something like this, it's the unknown. You're afraid. We fear the unknown. We tend to demonize it. This was an intelligence, a non-human spiritual intelligence that was just as curious about us as we were about her. And there was nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, that's the one thing that always gets me is when people, they're not even in the location for 5 minutes and it's a demon all of a sudden, or even before you get there, it's a demon.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the afterlife frequency, is educating people. We have to leave this primeval, primitive, superstitious nonsense where it belongs, in the past, and begin understanding things. When I was 8 years old, my dad worked with NASA. He was my hero. And we were looking at the stars one night, and I'm thinking, my dad works with astronauts, and I was one of these kids. I loved space. I had all these models and things that I'd make. And we were looking at the stars, and he said, Mark, there's no such thing as a mystery. There's only questions for which we do not yet have the answer. And if enough research, enough funding, enough dedication goes into something, we're going to discover the answer. And science is what will explain it to us. And so that had a very profound impact on me. And that's how I govern myself. When I go into something I don't understand, it's a demon. No, it's not a demon. It is some type of energetic spiritual being. Let's take our measurements. Let's see what messages it conveys before we jump to conclusions.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, completely agree with that. Okay, so the next question is, there are some people who claim that a medium can never make a connection for them. Some people claim spirits of loved ones come to them. Others say they've never experienced that phenomenon. Why is that?
It's because the recipients, block it without meaning to. In the Afterlife Frequency, there's a chapter entitled The Unfolding, which means that after the reading, things will make more sense. They unfold. But the name of the chapter is The Unfolding and Avoiding the No Syndrome. A lot of people, if I'm trying to do a reading, no, they shoot everything down. Okay, I'll say, is this making sense? No. Before you shoot it down, if you know everything, you're creating a barrier. They're going to back off. It's better to say, let me think about it. I'm not sure. Okay, I don't know at this time. The other no is overthinking, overanalyzing. Go with the first thing that hits you. Okay, like I was doing a reading earlier tonight, and my client, his sister had died about 3 months ago. And I said, she's sending me the image of a basket of peaches. He said, no, that doesn't make any sense. He goes, well, after she died, I went to visit her kids and I brought them a basket of peaches. But I don't think that's what she's talking about. I said, hold on. Let's back up here. You visited her children and brought them a basket of peaches. Explain to me why this is not direct evidence that the spirit of your sister was around you and her children and aware that you brought them a basket of peaches. Oh!
Yeah, I guess I have a lot more reading to do because I haven't gotten that far either.
That story's not in there because that just happened about 2 hours ago.
But yeah, the whole no. Yeah, I need to get further, which brings me to
the
another
no
question.
syndrome. And all right, and also for people who are in a horrific and profound state of grief, without meaning to, they're creating a block. And I'm not faulting anyone for grieving the death of a loved one. It's just that you get so overwhelmed by it that I want this contact. The I want is that same no energy. And so the Afterlife Frequency teaches you how to remove those blocks.
Okay. And then that just brings up a question is, some people ask me all the time on other shows that we've had is, they want to develop their psychic abilities. Are there any way that someone who feels they could have abilities, I know you mentioned classes earlier don't always work, but is there a way that someone could maybe either build up or enhance their abilities that they feel they have?
Yeah, there's a lot of development classes out there, and check them out. There's spiritual publications like Natural Awakenings, and there may be some local ones where people may be teaching some psychic development classes. Check it out, see if it's for you. Maybe you do have the ability that you haven't cultivated, or and if you try and it just doesn't work, well, you gave it a shot.
Yeah. Mark, your father sounds like a wise man.
Thank you. even though I can communicate with his spirit, there's not a day that goes by that I don't miss him. And York, he taught me something very important. Um, as men, we never want to show our feelings and our emotions. We never want to cry. And I work with, because I'm a male medium, I get a lot of military that come to see me. I get police. I get a lot of men because they feel more comfortable, talking to me about some of these issues. But the only socially acceptable emotion for men to display is anger. Seriously. I mean, that's done a really great job for human history now, hasn't it? In the idea, but what I try to teach men is that we have tear ducts, hearts, and feelings for a reason. And it's also been proven that the tears of grief contain the neurotransmitters, the chemicals that cause depression. And so crying and getting them out of our body is a healthy thing. And my father taught me many things, but he taught me that a real man is never afraid to cry for someone he loves who has died. And he said, and more importantly, Mark, a real man is never afraid to say to somebody that you truly love, I love you. And, let's face it, my dad was an alpha male, but he also realized that the most important thing in life isn't money, isn't fame, isn't glory. It's the people you love.
Mm-hmm. You said you don't believe in hell or demons. Can you give a little insight on what you believe in behind possessions?
There's different types of mediums. I'm a mental medium, which means that spirits communicate with me mentally. I've yet to see a physical medium that I believed it was authentic, so I don't even want to talk about that. But there are people who are trance mediums. That's what we call them in Britain. In the United States, they're channelers. And they don't realize it. Many people may not realize it. And so if they encounter a non-human spiritual intelligence, see, a channeler is like Edgar Casey. He would go into a trance, and then he called it the universal mind, the collective consciousness, spirits would speak through him. So let's say that you're a channeler, you don't know it, and an elemental or some other energy starts speaking through you. And then for people who don't understand, this could appear to be demonic possession. So,
okay. And then, when people are grieving and are desperate to connect with a specific person, do you educate them first that person might not come through?
Yes. And this is explained on my website. When people go for a reading, I recommend 4 to 6 months after the death. Because a lot of people, I want to talk to them right away. All right. I get it. Somebody you love has died. You are totally devastated. But what are you going to get out of a reading if you're hysterical, crying, arguing, and those are perfectly normal and natural emotions. But with a reading, you've got to wait until your emotions stabilize, till that new normal. New normal is not fun. New normal means you're getting to the point where you're beginning to accept that the person you love has died. And then when you're at that point, that's when you're going to get the maximum benefit out of a reading. Because if you say, I want them here, I want them here, I want them here. Okay. I remember trying to do a reading for this woman. This woman brought her mother, and the spirit came through and go, well, he's here. She started shouting at me, no, he's not. And she went through this whole thing. I said, why are you here? She goes, I don't know. And she got up and ran out. And her daughter said, I was hoping this would help. Well, if you're going to behave like that, don't go to a medium. You've got to be open to it and be polite. Okay. I mean, maybe you'll get the connection. Maybe it won't be so good. But the thing is, if the recipient is creating energetic blocks or being argumentative, then, well, put it this way. If you went to get your appendix out and you weren't really, anesthetized, and you wanted to smack the doctor every chance you got, how successful do you think that operation's going to be?
That just makes me laugh because I had my appendix out years ago and I was passed out. So I can only just imagine me doing that in the middle of it.
Well, yeah. Well, it's funny because, like, on my show, people call and go, "Well, I'm driving and I want to talk to a spirit," and it's like, well, if I had to take your appendix out, would you let me do it when you're driving? Well, no. Well, then why do you want to engage in something that requires an intense focus, concentration when you're driving? Okay. And what if something comes through that you're emotionally devastated and you're going to cause an accident? The point is we want to talk to the other side, not send you there.
What's the difference between a spiritual sensitive and an empath?
An empath is a person who picks up on the emotions and feelings of other people. Think of a sponge. A spiritual sensitive is somebody who is sensitive to the presence of spirits around them.
Okay. And then, how does your book deal with issues such as homicide, post-traumatic stress disorder, or survivor's guilt?
I'll let the reader find out for themselves.
Oh, man. No.
But it does, because those are all very devastating things. And the book, it teaches you how to recognize, accept, feel, and trust messages from spirits. It explains the scientific basis for spirit communication. It helps people cope with PTSD, survivor's guilt, coping with loss. So there's many facets to it that will be of great benefit to the reader. So.
And then, do you feel like sharing how the Afterlife Frequency helps people develop spiritual awareness, situational awareness?
Well, I thought we'd gone over time because.
No, we go anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. But if you want to finish it,
the thing is, I have a really early morning tomorrow, so 2 hours, unfortunately, is not going to.
Not a problem. Let me get this up, and I'll let you go. And so, again, thank you, Mark, for joining us. If you guys want to get his book or more information on his shows and information about his book, go to the afterlifefrequency.com. And I'm going to stick around for another 45 minutes. So if you guys have any questions about paranormal, feel free to ask. We'll just have a discussion, and I'll see if I can get someone else on the show. Sorry, I thought they relayed to you that it was 2 hours. So
no, they I got that it was 1 hour.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. It's okay.
It's a long story what I got going on tomorrow morning. And it's been a very, very long day, and I've been dealing with internet outages, and we're having a windstorm where I'm at. So I'm dealing with things on a lot of fronts. But I want to thank you for having me on the show, and I want to thank all of the questions. These are really great questions, and thank you all. Many blessings. Namaste. Have a nice day.
Thank you, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Okay, and like I had said, I'm going to stick around for a little bit longer. And I just sent Philip a message, and I'm hoping Philip comes on. But if anybody has any questions, I'm also going to reach out to a few other people. So again, like I had said, this book is absolutely amazing. I'm about halfway through. So if you guys don't already have it, the Afterlife Frequency is, I just love how he shares his stories mixed in with everything else. And hold on one second. I'm hoping to get... Okay, so Philip will be joining us in about 3 minutes. So like I said, start asking questions, and we will make sure that we get them answered. Sorry, I don't mean to type. I'm trying to think of things to say. Okay, so I'm looking for... Okay. Oh, Stephanie, so you've been reading the book? I'm really glad that you got it, because I'm actually really enjoying it, learned a whole bunch. Going to use some of it for the book that I'm writing actually right now. So we'll make sure that. And actually, I'm just going to chit chat a little bit real quick. For those of you who are new to the show, you can follow us on at Ghost Education 101. And then our next presentation is going to be on November 24th. And here's Philip at 9 p.m. Eastern. And we'll have Robert Rehe with us and a discussion of all things paranormal. So, hey, Philip, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I figured he knew that it was an hour.
You mean
or 2 hours? Sorry.
2 hours? Oh, that was fascinating, though. I could relate a lot to the mediumship talk, which I find very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his book is very interesting, and like Stephanie's saying, she's not a science person, but he wrote it in a way that you could easily understand. And like I had said in the show, it made a lot more sense than it did when I was studying it in school.
Yeah, it's like Brandon Masula's book, The Ghost Studies. You know, it's all about the energy and our EMF fields, and you know, we emit this EMF, and this EMF contains DNA or messages. And if anyone's familiar with what your aura is, that's your EMF field that you project out of your body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how we communicate a lot of times with spirits, you know, here or on the other side. You know, when you blend your spirit with that spirit's aura and energy, that's when you get the communication. So if science could somehow study our human EMF fields,
Mm-hmm.
somehow to find out what's contained in that energy, because the information is in there somehow. I just don't think they know yet how to find it or see it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, no, it's I'm waiting to see what they have with the what was it, the soul phone?
Yeah,
I'm curious.
They've been talking about, you know, that Dr. Schwartz in the cell phone for years. I mean, that's like, but nothing ever, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
come out with it already. But I mean, if we're going to pick up and call, you know, the other side and, you know, can I speak to Aunt Betty? I mean, I would think the religious world would just kind of totally freak out with this, because it's going to kind of, well, like he said, it's either going to confirm they're over there,
Mm-hmm.
but it could also dispel heaven and hell at the same time. It's
Right.
like, oh, well, Uncle Bob was pretty much a jerk. He won't be up there. He'll be down there, but I can get him on the cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, you know, I'm ready for it. Bring it on.
Right. And then Stephanie wants to know, is the soul phone a fancy word for a spirit box?
No, this is actually some kind of more intense, mathematically concocted. You dial the other world somehow. I mean, I don't know, because it's kind of so secretive, but I don't think it's spirit box. This is more, from what I've understand it, it's like this is a direct call to, you know, Aunt Betty. I mean, that's something like that. So
yeah, a direct connection, which is, you know, are we going to have a new phone book or something?
yeah, but you know, it's like, but with spirit boxes, if you have worked with ITC, and I don't mean just going to a haunted location and turning on a spirit box. I mean, if you have studied ITC and George Meek and Marcello Bacci, some of these other people, and you know that what it was originally created for was to communicate with our loved ones, but when you're just fooling around with it, you don't know who you're talking to, because
Mm-hmm.
they will lie. The nasty ones can just play with you and taunt you, and you may think you're speaking with Aunt Betty, but it could be the murderer down the street. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm wondering with that how they'll differentiate the actual person you think you're getting compared to just making up a number and calling it and get whoever answers. I don't know. I just wish I knew more about it, but like you said, it's supposed to be coming out sometime, but man, I bet the Vatican will.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you ever remember, there was a short documentary on YouTube, and I cannot find it anywhere anymore. It was called EVP in the Vatican. Do you remember seeing it?
No.
It was really fascinating. It was a priest at the Vatican was recording the chants and some of the historical music and things. And when he was listening to it, he was getting his father's voice, who was in spirit. And he took it to the cardinal, and they took it to the Pope. And I don't remember what Pope it was at the time, but they couldn't dispute it because the cardinal or the priest knew the deceased person and knew his voice and knew what he was saying to the other priest, who was his son. And then the Pope was like, well, it's a sin to speak to the dead. Well, he just acknowledged that it happened because he said, don't do it. But if anybody can find that video, send us the link. I can't find it anymore. I don't know if they took it down or...
Yeah, I did a Google search for it, and it came up.
Yeah?
Yeah, EVP in the Vatican.
Found it? Okay. I think they took it off YouTube.
I don't know if this is the one, but I'll put it in.
It's not very long.
Yeah, it's like 5 minutes long or something.
Yeah, it was short. I can't remember, but
I don't know if that's the one. Hopefully I'm not. I'm going to scroll through it real quick to make sure it doesn't end up being porn or something. That would be mellow. We're good.
Okay. We don't want to get in Facebook jail. Been there.
Okay, and because I sent a message out to everybody. We have Archbishop Rockcliffe said he would be on our show if you want to bring him on.
Now?
He sent it via text because I sent a text out to several few other people asking if they wanted to join me in case you couldn't.
Oh. No, I just don't have my hair and makeup done, but I'm just jumped right on. What is the name of the book? Julia said.
Oh, yes, that's what I was in the middle of that, but then we got distracted with the EVP at the Vatican. It's the Afterlife Frequency. His website is on the bottom, and he does do a show on Thursdays as well. And like I had said, this is really good. I just need to get time to finish it.
Yeah, I've got to get it. I wonder if it's in CD, because I like getting the CDs and putting them in my car.
Yeah, I know it just came out, so
I have to look up. Is it on Amazon, or is it just on his website?
It's on Amazon. He links you directly to Amazon.
Okay, maybe they have a CD. I love the CD.
Yeah. And how much is a soul phone? I don't know.
We can't afford it. We can't afford it.
Yeah, definitely need a lot of research grants for that one.
Gotta get a spirit box.
Okay, and what is 1111?
1111. Well, it could be an angel number 1111, which is spirit guides are trying to give you a message. Is that what is he seeing 1111?
I'm not quite sure. That's all he has. So, Joe, if you can explain a little bit more. And then I'm just gonna.
Anytime you see a number in triplet, the same like 333, 222, and it keeps coming up, and it's just like in your face. Look it up. Angel number, blah blah blah, and realize what it is you're doing at that moment, because your guides or your angels may try to be sending you a message at that moment, something to be aware of and pay attention to. Like a lot of times I'll get it, and it'll be 444, and it's like, okay, calm down, stop stressing. I need balance things. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if I only look at the clock when it's like 222, or because I see that all day long.
How coincidental is that? How are you just going to be looking at it? Like if I can't sleep, I'll get up in the middle of the night and go to the kitchen, get a drink of water, and the oven will say 222. I mean, it's like, that's just not that coincidental when it happens often.
Oh, I think he's referring to Veterans Day.
Okay, I have no idea. Is that tomorrow?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
yeah, and Stephanie commented Veterans Day is 11/11.
Does that mean banks and post offices closed?
I don't know. I can't remember the last time I've actually been to a bank.
Oh, I'm trying to refinance my house, so that's why I was wondering. They just wanted a bunch of documents tonight. Well, Stephanie, for anyone who's interested, Stephanie is on my team, Georgia Paranormal Investigations, which is That sign right there.
Hiding.
And Warren Legacy Foundation.
Yep.
And we had a really good time at the old Jasper Jail. Was that last weekend? Halloween weekend. We had a really good time.
Yeah, that's what Kelly said. She said she had a great time.
Now, this is something interesting we can discuss. See if anyone listening has any thoughts. Okay, this building, built in 1906, it's made out of marble. The outside is marble because that area is the marble capital of the South. The inside is masonry, cement. The building is solid as a rock because it's basically a rock. Upstairs, okay, there's the only heating source downstairs were two electric units, newer, that's like on the wall. Upstairs in the ladies' cell block, on one, I call them cages because they look like cages with 4 bunk beds. It's horrifying. One area of that one cell had crazy carbon monoxide readings. I mean, it would go from like 0 to 30, 15, 25, 10 in just this one area. And several people took the meter and did it. And then it would go away. And then it would come back. And then when Kelly came to get me and tell me about it, I said, "Oh, that's just weird. Is the carbon monoxide reader, the battery good, blah, blah, blah." Yeah, the battery is new. So I walk in and I start to hold it up to that area and it's 0 for me. But at that moment we get an EVP and I've put the video, I think it's on Georgia Paranormal page. I don't want to tell you what I think it says because I don't like to put what I think it says. But several people think it says the same thing, that it's a woman's voice. But it was interesting. We were getting that weird reading. EMF was going off on the EDI and an EVP. So I always, am of the thought that if there's a carbon monoxide leak, it can give you the perception of something being paranormal because it's a toxic gas. Mm-hmm. Not that it would be present when something actually paranormal is happening. We couldn't find anywhere where there would be carbon monoxide. I asked Lloyd Auerbach about it. He said it could be like a straight pocket perhaps coming from somewhere. It's also, PSI, we affect our equipment mentally sometimes. Mm-hmm. So that's a possibility, but I'm thinking, but different people took the readings and it was happening. So unless we're all affecting it, I don't know if that would be an answer that I would accept. I don't know. It was something really weird that happened.
Right. Yeah. The only other thing that I could find, wrote in a quick Google search right now, is were there any paint removers or did they recently paint?
No, that paint was literally falling off of everything while we were there because I forget who it was. Oh my gosh, I think someone just touched my leg and it was a big chip of paint that fell on. I mean, I don't even want to know how much lead was in there. I just said, don't anybody look any of the cell blocks or anything because it's all lead paint. But yeah, we all tried to figure out where that could have come from.
Yeah. Stephanie says that it stays lower to the floor, but you guys picked it up on the second level.
Second level, yeah. I just could not figure it out.
Oh, could be a theory. Happens to houses built over old mine works.
For old mine works. There was I asked if there was a basement. There was no basement. There was like a cellar. He said it wasn't, you could even stand up in it. It wasn't finished out or anything. But that being there since 1906, I don't think there was anything on that spot of land before that was built. But I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows? It's just something really interesting that I've never encountered before.
Because Stephanie says there's a mine, but it's east and it's too far away.
Yeah. There was a train track across the road, but hardly ever they had a train come through. It's like, well, that would have been it anyway. So, no idea. Any questions? Any searing, deep, dark questions anybody has about anything?
Usually I have a list of, I could ask you the questions I had for him.
I'll make up answers, but this is interesting. We were going to this investigation on a Saturday, the 30th. On that Thursday night before we went, at about 3:30 in the morning, I got woken up by somebody, which is a big no-no for me. Spirits aren't supposed to wake me up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was really good in the sleep because I got a new CBD oil that helps me sleep like a log, and I'm thrilled. So I mean, I was out, and this man woke me up, and I was like, But I was enough that I looked at him. He wasn't giving me any information. I'm like, well, I don't know what you want. You're not saying anything, but I see you. Now go away. And I mean, I had to push him away because he would not go. I had to, like your guest, the one that does the cleansing, said she had to white light cleanse them out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was doing that. So the next day I texted somebody else on our team and I said, oh my gosh, I said, somebody came to visit. And she said, oh my gosh. And we started discussing it. Well, 3 on our team got the same man. Could not verify him because I didn't get a name, but we all got the visual of what he looked like. And he was basically warning us that we needed to be respectful of the jail. Mm-hmm. And of course we were. I mean, we cleaned, swept, did everything before we left. But it was really interesting that because I thought we were going to have something nasty, but he was just telling us with I won't tell you what, but it was like, you better behave. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, okay. We did. But yeah, I haven't had one wake me up in like 3 years. That was weird.
Cliff has another theory. It could have been a bell pit not recorded.
A bell pit. All right, what's a bell pit?
And Stephanie's wondering if the CO2 readings were spirits telling them that they couldn't breathe in their cells.
That's a thought. We didn't get a lot of equipment activity. We got some really interesting spirit box. We got some names. Couldn't verify them. We got a really interesting one. Ulysses came out just as clear as a bell. But not a lot of activity on our REM pods or anything. But we did get several. And people were still going through our audio and video, but we definitely got EVPs right away. That was fun. And next, we're in December. We're investigating a building about an hour and a half away that I don't know the year that it was built, but it was built as a bank. But it's reportedly very haunted. Stephanie could tell more about it because she's been the one setting it up for us. But says the elevator will start operating on its own and opening its doors, and floors will start clicking and people getting touched, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a big building.
Yeah, that's when you put a camera and just leave it run in the elevator.
Yeah. We're going to see what happens. Actually, very excited. We have a new DVR system coming. And the cameras have built-in microphones. Mm-hmm. So it's going to get audio and video in 4K. We're very excited. Questions, something. What? So what were you going to ask our guest?
I only had a few more questions to ask him, but it's well, you can't answer this unless you've read the book. But how does the Afterlife Frequency help people develop spiritual situational awareness? Mm-hmm. And then who would benefit from the reading? Oh, and if you have a spiritual message for the world, what is it?
Love one another. That's my spiritual message.
Exactly. It's one of those, I go through spells with this book. I get really interested, but then I'm easily distracted. And I like turn pages and it's like, what did I read? And I'm like 5 pages in.
That's why I like the CDs. Because I'm a very slow reader because I have the situation where I read the end of the sentence first.
Mm-hmm.
I read backwards. It's always been a problem. So it takes me forever to read. So that's why I love it on CD.
Mm-hmm.
And I can concentrate on it more than sitting and reading it because it takes me forever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't forget what the name of that is, but start at the end of the sentence first. It's a pain.
I actually got hooked on this book, and that says a lot. Yeah, I can't wait to finish it. I just got so busy.
And the near-death experience thing is fascinating to me. I mean, there's been studies, and I'm going to paraphrase this one, but there was one, it was an operating room. And in the operating room, very, very high up near the ceiling, there was a shelf that ran around near the ceiling that had different objects on it that no one could see from the floor. The only way you would be able to see what was on the shelves were if you were above. And I forget the statistics. If anybody can find out about this this study, I can't remember where I heard it, but there were people who had NDEs in this room and told about, well, I was up above, but I saw these weird things on the shelf, and that was evidence that they actually were above themselves because there was no other way for them to see them. I mean, that kind of stuff is fascinating to me.
Yeah, and for me, I think I was 5, and I had a tracheotomy because my voice box swelled my throat shut.
Oh my
And
God.
I don't know if it was a near-death experience or just an out-of-body experience, but I can remember at that young age seeing the doctors working on me.
Oh wow.
So, and it's,
You
yeah,
didn't
and
see the
that's
light?
stuck with me. No, I saw no light.
Oh. That's what scared me. It's like, where's the light?
I was 5, rushed to the emergency room, no clue what's going on. And here I am watching the surgeons operate on me.
No, I was so sick one time I was hallucinating. They told me I was talking about the girls dancing on the walls. But that's not the same thing as a near-death experience. So they were talking about the showgirls that were dancing on the wall and that you wanted them to be quiet. And I was like, yeah, I don't remember that.
Sounds like me after I had my knee replacement surgery.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to go back in for the other knee now.
At least you know what to expect.
Yeah, this one's going to be easier. They're actually discharging me the day of the surgery instead of keeping me for 3 days, and it's robot assisted.
Fascinating. Are robots expensive to operate on you? Do you get a discount because the doctor doesn't do it all? No.
Yeah, I don't. Probably not. Well, I'm switching headphones, and then
I started physical therapy Monday.
Cliff wants to know if you've ever heard a high frequency tone on an investigation.
Oh, wait, say that again. Ever heard a high frequency tone? Well, okay, Cliff. I have ringing in my left ear, and then I get a high pitched ring in this one, and it goes away. So I don't know if I would have heard it or not because I hear this all the time. That's why when it's quiet to do EVPs, it gets to me a little bit. But I don't know. Has anybody else that's listening ever had that? Something that I have experienced. I used to do a lot of ITC stuff at home a few years ago. I mean, all the time I'd be in here with my candles and talking to the whoever. And one time a friend wanted to try to connect with someone who had passed that she knows whose parents were upset and grieving. And we were like trying to find him and get him to come through. And we started hearing a choir chanting, like Gregorian, beautiful. I said, do you hear that? And she's like, I hear something. And I said, listen. And we just listened for a while. And it was like this angelic, but it was male voices, but you could hear the chanting. I mean, it was beautiful. just very lightly in the background. And later found out that is like a really high realm in the spirit world when you can hear that. So somehow we had tapped into that. I've got it on video. I forget which video it is on my YouTube page. Oh, I don't know because that one may be private because we were saying names of some people specifically. But that was fascinating, and I've heard a few other people said, "Oh, that's when you hear the chanting and the choir. That's you've tapped into something up there, but it's only happened once."
And have you studied anything with the Trails of Tears? There is a Fort Bufferington on Route 20, just outside of.
Well,
Yeah.
just there on the property of the jail we were at is an old log cabin that had belonged to a Cherokee Native American family. And the cabin was originally like, I think 3 or 4 miles away from the jail. And when the Trail of Tears started in North Georgia and they were moving the Cherokee out, the family that lived in this cabin were forced out. And at some point, they were going to build a highway through that area, and that cabin was in the way, and they moved it to this property. So they basically took this family's home. I mean, it's horrible. And so that family was in the Trail of Tears and got pushed out. So whenever there's Native Americans involved, I like to bring an offering, of respect, which is usually tobacco or something. And I was talking to Stephanie about it, and she said she would take care of it. So we brought tobacco, corn, and maize, and gave it as out of respect, because you don't mess with Native Americans. I mean, you don't want to mess with those spirits. You want them on your side, and that's the easiest way to do it. Is ask for permission and give them that offering of respect with the tobacco. And I mean, you can just sprinkle it around, but it lets them know that you are aware and that you were respectful.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been quiet tonight. Not a lot of questions.
It's the time change. It screwed me up. I mean, I'm not like ready for bed, and it's only like 10:30.
Mm-hmm.
So what else you want to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I know for the rest of the year, next week, here. We just an open discussion with Robert talking about all things paranormal and psychic abilities as well. We're going to continue with that. And then I know 2 weeks later in December, we have Ike Enzi, who is a former sheriff's detective and also the founder of IDK Paranormal. He has his own show on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Licia back for her Christmas stories.
Oh, that'll be good.
Just before Christmas. And that wraps up the year.
And then worry. Okay.
Rudy, if you're still watching, you can chime in, but I'm going to have Rudy and his co-host on our show after the first of the year to talk about how to host your own podcast. For those who are interested in the paranormal field, hosting their own podcast. They've had me on their show several times, and I figured I'd invite them on ours because they're just a blast. And they've had their own experiences with the paranormal as well.
I'm going to be on a podcast. They do it video, but it's on Apple, Apple. Mm-hmm. Something. But Ghost Magnet with
a twist.
Bridget Marquardt. I can never say her last name. I'm doing that on the 17th. I have no idea what she's going to ask me, but I'll ramble on about something. I did a PowerPoint presentation on Paranormal 101. Mm-hmm. I don't know if most of our people that watch Ghost Ed are well advanced of basic, Mm-hmm. But if anybody's interested, I could do it sometime next year, and it's basically paranormal for dummies. I mean, it's like from A to B, paranormal, and I've got some of all the types of hauntings and go through a little bit of each of those and stuff. If anybody's interested, I mean, I can do it.
Well, we can add it because it's actually been a while since we've done an actual presentation.
Okay.
Because we've had a lot of actually really good guests. I know we have February 2nd open. I'm looking at our schedule right now.
Okay.
So, Paranormal
That's so
101
blurry.
with Philip.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, I mean, it's informative, but a lot of our people know a lot of this stuff, but maybe it'll be a good refresher too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know we also have the one show that I had to cancel because of my family emergency. Kenneth Holden will be joining us to talk about spirit psychic abilities, and I believe we're also going to touch on psychic abilities in children.
Yeah.
And then Beth and I are hosting a show on how to host paranormal events.
I'm interested in that because I want to know about how you. Well, there's the release forms. You need the release forms if anybody gets possessed, hurt, falls down, that you're not responsible. But also, what do you do with the amateurs at an investigation?
Mm-hmm.
What things do you do? Do you do EVP sessions with them? Do you sit in a circle with a REM pod? I mean, what are the things that you do with them on an investigation? That's what and the process and the progression of what you do. But one thing you just mentioned, I want to talk about the difference between psychic and medium.
Okay.
Because a lot of people toss these around, and there is a difference. Not all psychics are mediums, but all mediums are psychic. I don't know if people are aware of that. When you're psychic, you are basically tapping into the sitter, the higher self, their soul, that there's no past, present, or future. Time does so your higher self knows things from the future.
Mm-hmm.
So a psychic is tapping into that information. It's not coming from the spirit world out there. That's just totally different. Psychic information comes from usually living people. Mediumship is when you are connecting to the higher spirit world and you're getting information from a deceased person.
Mm-hmm.
And they're giving you the information. So there is a difference when people say, "Oh, I'm psychic and I talk to dead people." Well, your psychic part of you is not talking to the dead people. You're getting that information from the universe, but you're not getting it from the highest and the best of the spirit world. So does that make sense to people? Anybody got any questions about that?
I'm scrolling through real quick.
So if you see psychics, palm readers, that kind of thing, they may not be able to connect with your dead grandmother. They may be able to pull information from you about that person, but they're not getting it from the other side. They're getting it from you.
Yeah, no questions on that, but Stephanie wants to know, have you ever had such a bad experience at a place that you were investigating?
Yep.
I was going to say, I've had several, and I've talked about a lot of them on the show.
Me too. The one at the school where that, whatever it was, hit me like a brick wall. That was the scariest.
Yep.
I mean, that was scary. I remember we were doing an investigation at a house that was on the Civil War battle skirmish land. I mean, the earthworks, which are trenches that they dug to shoot from, were literally in the backyard of this house. But the homeowner had given us, a tour, and some of my other teammates were unpacking stuff, and I said, "Oh, I wanted you to show me the attic." And she said, "Oh, yeah, come with me," and took me down the hall, around the corner, and there was the pull down stairs. You flip them down, and you.
Yep.
And she pulled the first thing down, and all you heard were whispers and voices. I said, "Stop." I said, "Do you hear that?" And she said, "Oh, you mean the whispering?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, yeah, we're already used to that." So I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to go up here by myself." So she pulled the steps down, and she said, "Yeah, you can just go up." She said, "Watch where you step." So my teammate, I said, come on, come here with me. So we're going up the steps, and on audio, you hear, let me out of this house. That was freaky.
Yep.
Hearing the voices, not with your third ear, but
Mm-hmm.
actually hearing them. And her saying, oh, yeah, we're used to that's normal. I was like, okay.
It happens all the time, sure.
Yeah. And the doll that floated into the son's bedroom without a head, yeah, that's normal too. But that wasn't so much scary other than fascinating. The
Mm-hmm.
scary one was when whatever it was at that school hit me in the chest and hit my teammate and threw him into the wall. But I've
Yeah.
never been picked up and thrown or anything yet. I mean, as long as I don't hit anything hard, it'll be all right. But, I am old and things break easily at my age. So,
Yeah, no, being picked up and that's not fun. When that ghost or whatever it was swept me off my feet, and I was in a bathtub cleansing the windowsill. So I mean, I landed hard. It hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, that's scary.
And that was the first time I mean, I've been touched, but that was the first time I actually felt attacked
I
by
have
anything.
had one experience where an investigation in it had been a textile factory turned into apartments. So it was just a big old building with the hardwood floors and chopped up into these apartments. And I already knew of the two spirits that were there because, I just knew.
Mm-hmm.
But we're in the living room of this one apartment, and my former team did a lot of sitting around. They did a lot of sitting without doing anything. So we're sitting there on the sofa, and the sofa, it was open from back of the sofa to the door. I mean, so there's plenty of space there, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I start feeling breathing on my neck. I was like, I said, oh my God, I am feeling hot breath on my neck. I mean, it was, but you know what it feels like. I mean, you don't mistake that. And then all of a sudden my ear popped like going up in an airplane. And I said, oh my God, my ear just popped too. And it just freaked me out. And then at that same time, we heard this loud moan. And everybody was like, oh my God, did y'all hear that? I was like, yeah, we heard it. But on the recorder, that moan was help.
Mm-hmm.
But that was wild to feel breath coming from something that wasn't there.
Right. Yeah, it's I don't even know how to explain it to someone who's never experienced it before.
No, it's and Professor Paranormal, Mr. Lloyd, would say that spirit was communicating with me telepathically and putting that physical sensation into my brain, and my body brain was like a phantom. I don't know how to explain it. Like a person who has a limb amputated can still feel it because of the brain. So we're thinking, because there was nothing physically there to be causing the breath, so they're communicating with you through telepathy and putting that feeling into my head so my body would feel it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what fascinates me about the whole thing. Because, how can there something be breathing on me when there's nothing there? Maybe there's something there and we can't see it. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, so many unanswered questions. It's sad. Okay.
Any questions?
Well,
I can talk.
Greg has one, but I'm not sure what he's asking. He says, have you guys ever heard of anything like this above? And I don't see anything above on my platform, so I don't know if it's something.
Well, because I had to sign off of Facebook because I was hearing the audio, so I can't see remarks.
And he wants to know, I didn't even see that comment. I must have missed it. I'm sorry, Greg. On the double Estes. Let me scroll up and see. Oh, here it is. We've been experiencing like space noise above the white noise doing double Estes.
What spirit box are you using, Greg? Can you tell me?
I'll wait a little bit for his response to that.
I have gotten and I'm sure other people who do a lot of ITC have gotten the electronic sounding voice. Almost sounds robotic. Some people think it's non-human, demonic because there's a specific sound to it, but you can hear it. I mean, you can hear the words, you can hear what it's saying, but it's almost electronic sounding, and it is not the radio wave sounds. It's completely on top of all that. I don't know if anybody else has ever heard that, but I'd be curious. Oh yeah, those are the ones I use. I love the S box. I mean, no telling what you're tapping into. No, I don't have that. That's one of the clairs of like clairvoyance and sentient and stuff.
Yeah.
I never have, but I have had one. I started itching profusely all over my body. I mean, like itching. I mean, I was like clawing myself, and it was a smallpox cemetery, which I didn't know, but tasting.
I've never had a taste either.
Greg, well, I don't know if any of you, well, you should know who Frank Sumption is. Frank's box, which I am proud enough to own one, which I keep locked away because it's like my pride and joy. But Frank Sumption did not build his original boxes to speak to human spirits. He built those to speak to do alien communication. And just so happened, human spirits started coming through. I mean, anything's possible. I mean, I talk to dead people, so I can't say it's not possible. Anything's possible.
Okay, well, we have less than 3 minutes. No,
I'm just getting warmed up.
I know. Well, thank you for jumping in.
Sure.
I felt bad that I kept talking, and he's thinking it's an hour, and I'm glad he knew it was 2 hours, so I felt bad.
I probably had to start paying him for that second hour, and his are probably. Anybody want to know about anything on my table? Anybody want to know?
Should we message whatchamacallit, Archbishop's ready to join us? Do you think we could go longer tonight?
I ain't got anything to do.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Heather?
Good. Thank you for joining us. I'm actually messaging our thing to make sure we can go a little bit longer than normal.
Yeah, I kind of got the message like kind of to just sent me that link, and I was trying it, and I was looking at it. I was like, oh yeah, I can't do that on my phone. Hold on, let me get the computer on.
No problem. Yeah, I had a guest on earlier, and he thought it was only an hour show, but it turned out to be a 2-hour show, and he had to leave. So I was frantically looking for people to join me, so I wasn't alone.
That happens.
Now here's someone. Let's ask him about the religious repercussions of the soul phone.
Which one?
When we were talking about the soul phone and picking it up and calling the other side and getting your loved ones.
I haven't really heard much about that.
You have it's oh my gosh, his name just went right out of my head. Schwartz. Is it Gary Schwartz? Dr. Schwartz has been working on this apparatus for years, and it's supposed to really be a phone call to the dead.
Wow.
And people are saying
but that would probably, I mean, you can't guarantee what you're speaking with. I mean,
well, this one supposedly, I don't know if I've been hearing the right things. This is like a direct call to dead Aunt Betty. I mean, I don't know. I wish that he would come out with the thing already if he's going to do it. But the spirit boxes, we know that they can lie to.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really guarantee what you're talking to and anything like that. I mean, you can open the door, but you can't guarantee what's going to come through that door.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to warn people that all the time when they want to play with the Ouija board.
Yep. Okay.
They usually end up calling myself or somebody else in what I do.
Yeah.
I'm actually part of the Solomonic Order of St. Michael the Archangel. I'm actually chief exorcist for my order.
Oh, Archangel Michael. Yeah. He's sitting right over there behind my computer. I mean, the candle, not the real. Well, the real one's all around.
Okay. Yeah. Hold on one second.
And
Okay.
I carry his medallion in my wallet, and one medallion of his in each of my equipment cases when I go on investigations.
I got one too.
And I'm actually, I hate to wrap this up, but I was just notified that there is a show starting at 11 o'clock. So we do have to wrap up. We can't continue lingering a little bit longer. Sorry you couldn't join us, but can I message you and have you on one of our shows one day?
Anytime you want, Heather.
Okay, perfect. I will definitely message you and make sure I get you on more than just the last 5 minutes.
Just I got to see your great flag back there. I like that.
Yeah. Old Templar Crusader flag.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And here is the information for the guest we had on earlier, the Afterlife Frequency. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Have a great night.
Have a good one.